And maybe that's true. I don't really know enough about meteorology to know if that's true. But I know this began in a little bit of a way with the liberals pushing for equal housing opportunity and for the opportunity for poor people and people who are perhaps less creditworthy to get loans and mortgages so they could own their own houses, because it was assumed that owning your own house is automatically a very good thing to have. So that was done, and that was enacted into law in 1999. Fannie and Freddie were very much encouraged to make those loans happen. So that started the ball rolling. Then when the Republicans came into office and the recession that began in the last part of Bill Clinton's administration started, that Mr. Greenspan pushed interest rates way down. There was the horror of 9/11, and interest rates went down even further. And so the banks found they could not make much money making normal loans, but they could make a lot more money making these high-risk loans, which they claimed were not high-risk because they had done some financial engineering to make them not high-risk. And so they started grinding out these loans. And then by then the conservatives who were running Washington said, well, they don't need to be regulated. Markets regulate themselves. We don't need to have any regulation. And the banks, as I say, had these enormous incentives to issue these bonds, these mortgages, which they collected and put into what are called collateralized debt obligations, and they started issuing these in large quantities. The fees were immense compared to the fees for a prime mortgage obligation of the same kind. And as long as housing prices were going up, they were in a secular boom, it was fine, because even people who couldn't afford the mortgages could refinance, get out of them, and keep merrily, get out of the old one, get a new one. If they couldn't pay that one, they'd refinance that one, get a new one. It was all fine. Then, of course, the housing market started to turn, as housing markets always do. They always fluctuate. They never go in one direction consistently. At that point, some genius arrived on the scene, and he thought of having very large side bets called credit default swaps. And you guys are smart enough to understand what they are in detail, but for my limited intelligence, they're just basically side bets on whether a mortgage will go will continue and be repaid, or whether it will fail. And the people who took the side saying they'll fail put down enormous amounts. So if there was a $1 billion bond about mortgages, people could bet $1 trillion, literally $1 trillion, on whether or not that bond would fail. And they didn't have to have an insurable interest. They didn't have to be part of the deal. They just could make that bet with anyone who would take the bet. One of the big players who would take the bet was AIG. Another one was Merrill Lynch. Another one was Bear Stearns. Another one was Lehman Brothers. Another one was Goldman Sachs. Another one was Bank of America. You get the picture. When the credit market started to fall apart, and when the home prices started to fall, and everything sort of collapsed upon itself, then the prices of these credit default swaps went up, because they go in the inverse direction of the thing they're insuring. And the liability of the companies that were issuing these became staggering, just breathtaking, beyond reason. The amount of money outstanding in subprime debt is a very large number to any one of us in this room, unless Mr. Gates happens to be in this room. But for all the rest of us, it's a very large number, and that dwarfed the losses on the mortgages themselves. And that is what's causing the real collapse at these big banks, and the trembling that we feel throughout the financial system is the side bets. And the side bets just devastated, paralyzed, terrified the whole finance sector. So now we have these side bets, derivatives, what Warren Buffett called weapons of financial mass destruction, working their way through the system, just putting the fear of God into everybody. This is paralyzing commercial paper, paralyzing all different kinds of loans. It's a real serious problem. I think eventually they're going to, as courts or the legislature, are going to have to annul these credit default swaps as void, as against public policy. We had another giant super problem, a catastrophic problem. Ever since 1933, the bedrock of the U.S. financial system is that we are not going to let any big bank fail. We're not going to let any big bank fail. If it does fail, we'll merge it with somebody else, and we will assume its liabilities, and life will go on even if it's under another name. Then, just a very short time ago, Mr. Paulson, Secretary of the Treasury, decided to let a very, very important bank, Lehman Brothers, fail. They had made terrible mistakes over Lehman. It's not clear that they had been totally candid with the world about their situation, but he let them fail, and that sent shockwaves through the financial system because they thought, well, if Lehman can fail with its venerable name and with its many, many connections in Washington, and with the fact that it was considered too big to fail, then anything can fail, and solvency is no longer to be taken for granted. And that was a terrible, terrible blow. I think that was the worst blow the financial system has suffered in my lifetime, and I was born some time ago. So I think that was the real serious problem. Now there is this terrible fear throughout the financial system, and as we know, lending is much more, as they always say in the newspaper, seized up. There's a lot of reluctance to lend. Rates for interbank loans have gone way, way up. It's been a terrible problem. And obviously, as we know, the bailout has not stopped the fall in the markets. Although we don't know how bad the fall off in the markets would be if there hadn't been a bailout plan. This very morning, those of us who went online know that a new plan has been put in place by the Federal Reserve to actually buy the commercial paper that the people who want to issue commercial paper have outstanding or want to have outstanding. That's going to be bought by the Federal Reserve, by Mr. Bernanke. I think that's a very, very, very good plan. It's an extremely good plan, and I think this may, and I'm just emphasizing the word may, help us turn the corner here. It's got to be done worldwide, but the means exist to do it worldwide. I am worried that the next shoe to drop will be a drastic slowdown in economic activity in the Far East, and that's going to be another enormous problem. But for the meantime, it may be that this extremely aggressive rescue package announced this morning by Mr. Bernanke will turn the corner. But will we ever learn that if something seems to be too good to be true, it probably is? Will we ever learn the lessons of Drexel and Milken and the tech boom, that if something seems to be something for nothing, it's probably not something for nothing, and you always pay for what you don't pay for? Will people ever learn that deregulation doesn't work as long as there are men and women around who have the chance to take money out of the cookie jar? If that's not being watched, they will do it. We've got to somehow learn about this. These guys on Wall Street are not saints. The Bush administration had the extremely naive idea, one of a few naive ideas, that these people on Wall Street were just princes, I don't think Mr. Bush kind of met many of these people if he thought they were princes, but anyway, and we're paying the price for it. It is a crime, a real crime, a genuine crime, in the sense of a crime that people should be in jail for, that we have a system in which people can take out enormous salaries. Mr. Fold, the head of Lehman, got paid something like $550 million before he drove his firm off a cliff. I don't think he's going to have to pay back that money, but he may be doing some jail time. But it's a crime that Wall Street has taken hundreds of billions, trillions, literally trillions, out of the economy in the last 7 years, and basically left those of us who are planning for our retirement with ashes. For the great majority of middle class and upper middle class Americans at this point, retirement is just a dream. It's just a fantasy. It's never going to happen. It's not going to happen. The whole idea of a comfortable retirement for tens of millions of Americans is not going to happen. I'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, something's got to be done about this. There has to be some accountability. It's just not right for there to be one class of citizens in the top echelons of the finance world who can do anything they want, just suck all the blood they want out of the financial system, and all the rest of us are left holding the bag. That's just not a system of laws. It's got to stop.